A boy collapsed to the ground after just a few coughs. Strange white spots appeared on the boy's face, and blood continuously trickled from the corners of his eyes. There were many more infected individuals like him in this place. This is the latest Australian disaster movie of 2024, Contagion of Fear. A bizarre virus spread throughout the city, taking only 2 hours from infection to death. The story begins on a sunny morning. At a Melbourne subway station, passengers were waiting for the next train to arrive. But just as the train was approaching the station, something strange happened. A pungent, strange odor suddenly filled the subway. Before anyone could figure out what was going on, the passengers who smelled the odor began to cough uncontrollably. The subway driver also smelled the odor, and after just a few coughs, he lost consciousness. The unmanned train derailed and crashed straight into the crowd at the station. The violent collision caused an explosion, and thick smoke immediately billowed out of the station. Panicked passengers tried to escape, but the virus had already spread through the air, and those infected began to show symptoms of coughing. In the crowd, an old man was helping an injured man trying to leave the subway station. The man, feeling he couldn't hold on, asked Yousef to help call his family, but as soon as Yousef picked up the man's phone, a staff member maintaining order nearby mistook him for a thief. Without listening to Yousef's explanation, the staff member locked him in a confinement room. Yousef tried to explain, but the infected staff member suddenly died. The police arrived at the scene immediately after receiving the report. However, upon arriving at the entrance of the subway station, everyone was stunned by the scene before them. The entire station was in chaos, with infected people lying all over the ground. In order to prevent the spread of the virus, the authorities immediately blocked the entrances and exits of the underground station, and anyone who wanted to leave would be expelled. Jack's wife, Elizabeth, escaped before the lockdown and immediately informed Jack about the virus in the subway station. However, Jack, fearing his wife would infect their child, did not open the door, and Elizabeth died right there at the entrance. Looking at his wife at the door, Jack rushed out of the flat with his children. Meanwhile, Yousef, locked in the quarantine room, called his daughter Lila. Lila, a detective on vacation, rushed to the scene as soon as she learned her father was trapped in the subway station. The situation inside the station was dire. Infected civilians were coughing up blood and seeking help, but without understanding the virus's origin and type. Rescue workers didn't dare to enter rashly, taking advantage of a moment when her colleagues weren't paying attention. Lila, wearing a gas mask, sneaked into the subway station, but when Lila arrived at the platform, she was stunned by the scene before her. The place was filled with infected passengers, all lying on the ground, no longer breathing. At the service station, Lila found her father, who had been locked up. Yousef was not infected and was very healthy. From her father, Lila learned about the moments before the disaster struck. Yousef had just returned from the mosque when a smell similar to gas suddenly filled the subway, causing everyone to start coughing. Shortly after, the subway derailed. For some unknown reason, everyone else was infected except for him. The kind-hearted Yousef wanted Lila to take him to a doctor, offering himself for research if it could help. However, Lila told her father to find a place to hide. Earlier, Lila had learned from a colleague that this was a terrorist attack. Someone had released a biochemical virus in the subway. Everyone was infected except for her father. If people discovered this, Yousef would certainly be mistaken for the terrorist who released the gas. Hearing Layla's words, Yousef realized the danger but couldn't understand why he wasn't infected. But now was not the time to dwell on it. After bidding farewell to her father, Lila returned to the subway station. On the surveillance monitors, she noticed a strange woman. The woman was not infected and wasn't wearing a mask. Lila quickly took out her phone to photograph the woman, but suddenly the subway station's power was cut off. Lila hurried to the surveillance area, only to find the woman had disappeared. At that moment, she heard voices from a corner. Lila peeked and saw the woman talking with an infected woman. The infected woman handed over a bottle, which the woman placed in a box before pulling out a syringe. Just as Lila rushed over, the woman noticed her. The woman grabbed the box and dashed into an alley. By the time Lila arrived, the woman was gone. Lila hurried back and found the infected woman, but as soon as Lila crouched down, the woman suddenly pushed her away and darted into another alley. When Lila chased after her, the woman had vanished too. At that moment, Lila saw two staff members collecting bodies. She saw that someone inside a body bag was still alive and thought the staff had made a mistake. She wanted to alert the staff, but the infected woman suddenly coughed, splattering fluid onto Layla's face. Seeing this, two health workers approached. Layla showed her badge, indicating she was a police officer, but the health workers didn't care. Any infected person had to be taken away. Seeing that persuasion was useless, Lila kicked away the approaching health workers, but she hadn't run far when Lila suddenly felt dizzy. Before she could react, she collapsed to the ground. In a daze, Lila saw the woman from before appear beside her. Harriet injected something into Lila and then hurriedly left. Lila extracted Harriet's fingerprints from the syringe and told her colleague Owen what she had witnessed in the subway station. Lila speculated that Harriet had injected her with an antidote to suppress the virus and wanted the police to find Harriet immediately, but Owen told Lila that there was no one left at the police station. It turned out that the airport had also been attacked, and all officers had been dispatched there. With no other options, Lila had to investigate on her own. She found Harriet on 32nd Street based on the fingerprints on the syringe, but before Lila could question her, gunshots rang out from a distance. Inside Harriet's coat, Lila found a notebook with the name Pax written in it. Lila remembered this name. Pax was a celebrity. Could this attack be related to him? Lila quickly took the notebook and found Pax. At his house, she discovered the box the woman had taken, confirming Pax's involvement in the attack. Lila immediately arrested him. However, just as Lila was about to interrogate Pax, Chief Wallace suddenly entered with 2 lawyers. Interrupting the session, Wallace not only ordered Lila to stop her investigation but also suspended all her duties. Wallace's actions infuriated Lila. While she was arguing with Wallace, Pamela suddenly gave a televised speech. Pamela announced on TV that the terrorist attack was orchestrated by an Islamic extremist group. To protect all citizens, Pamela signed an Immigration Expulsion Act, ordering all immigrants to be deported. Just after Pamela's bill passed, a radical group emerged to drive out immigrants. They stormed into the homes of immigrants, vandalizing everything in sight. The sudden appearance of this radical group caught the police off guard. However, this was only the beginning. The suspended Lila saw a news report about her father. A self-proclaimed justice seeker had somehow obtained the subway surveillance footage. Because Yousef was not infected, the online user claimed Yousef was the one who released the gas. Seeing the news, Lila thought of her father and rushed home, only to find that he had been killed. The murderer was a citizen named Jack. When Jack saw the video, he happened to encounter Lila's father, grieving his wife's death. Jack assumed Yousef was the terrorist. During their altercation, Jack accidentally pushed Yousef, causing him to hit a flower bed and die unexpectedly. Yousef's death quickly made headlines. The public not only applauded but also raised funds to bail Jack out, hailing him as a national hero. Watching the news broadcast, Lila grew increasingly suspicious. How could a terrorist attack and the drive to expel immigrants coincide? Recalling Wallace's behavior earlier, a bold idea formed in Lila's mind. She kidnapped Pamela and demanded to know why she signed the bill. At first, Lila thought it was all Pamela's conspiracy, but Pamela revealed she was forced to sign the bill. Pamela's daughter had been kidnapped by the radical group. They threatened to harm her daughter unless Pamela signed the bill. Helpless, Pamela had no choice but to sign the Immigration Expulsion Act. Lila unlocked Pamela's phone and found a video sent by the terrorists. Using the video's background, Lila located the place where the video was filmed, an abandoned subway station. As a result of Wallace's behavior, Lila suspects that the police have been bought off. To avoid alerting anyone, Lila and Pamela quietly went to the subway station. In a storage room, they found Pamela's kidnapped daughter. There were no terrorists around at all. From Pamela's daughter, Lila learned that the person behind the kidnapping was actually a wealthy man named Langston. Langston was an anti-immigrant who believed immigrants were inferior and lazy. To drive out immigrants, he orchestrated the terrorist attack. Before the attack, Langston injected the immigrants with an antidote under the guise of a vaccination. After the attack, Langston began executing his plan. First, he bribed government officials, then kidnapped Pamela's daughter. After stirring public outrage with the attack, Langston leaked the subway surveillance footage to radical group members, making them believe Yousef was the terrorist who released the virus. He successfully redirected all the anger toward the immigrants. Knowing the truth, Lila wanted to expose it to the public, but when she picked up her phone, she discovered she was now a wanted fugitive. Surveillance footage of her rescuing her father at the subway station had surfaced online. Using this as an excuse, Wallace issued a warrant for her arrest. Seeing the report, Lila knew she couldn't just sit and wait. She and Pamela decided to split up. Pamela would hold a press conference to expose Langston's conspiracy, while Lila would find a way to arrest Langston. With Jack's help, Lila obtained Langston's address. She scaled the wall of the backyard and sneaked in. As soon as she entered, she saw Pax. It turned out Pax was Langston's son. Langston and Pax were smugly congratulating themselves on their scheme. Lila took Pax hostage, demanding Langston confess his plot. But Langston killed Pax without hesitation. It turned out Pax was not his biological son. Langston then tried to kill Lila, but she suddenly overpowered him while he was gloating. Lila killed Langston, but before she could catch her breath, a group of radicals stormed the mansion under the guise of driving out immigrants. Seeing the wanted Lila there, the radicals dragged her out. Luckily, Jack arrived in time to stop the riot. Meanwhile, Pamela held her televised speech, exposing Langston's conspiracy to the public and leading to the repeal of the Immigration Expulsion Act. This is the full story of the 2024 Australian disaster movie Contagion of Fear. Overall, the first half of the film is okay, but the second half is a bit of a letdown and a waste of a good subject matter. Well, that's all for today. See you next time.